There's more to San Francisco than beautiful bridges and quaint cable cars. Likewise, there's more to Beijing than the Olympics. Today, we'll find fun for the family that wants a little more Beijing and a little less balance beam. In this episode, even the most avid sports fans shouldn't miss a visit to the Forbidden City, the world's largest palace complex. Then step back 2,000 years in history and step up onto the Great Wall of China. And why should Olympians get all the exercise? Ride a bike through historic neighborhoods called Hutongs. Also, Panjiayuan, the largest flea market in China, with the crafts of 56 Chinese ethnic groups. Finally, visit this abandoned factory and see the edgiest, most avant-garde art in Beijing. All coming up on Beijing Are You Ready? The 2008 Games will make Chinese history, but history has been made here since the early 1400s at Beijing's Forbidden City. Even the most avid sports fans shouldn't miss it, the world's largest palace complex. Construction of the Forbidden City began in 1406. It's estimated that more than 1 million men labored to build this royal city within the city of Beijing. It took them 14 years to finish. The Forbidden City occupies more than 178 acres, or about the same area as 135 U.S. football fields. Its 800 buildings are the largest collection of preserved ancient wooden structures in the world. Once you're in the Forbidden City, it really does feel like a city. It seems to go on forever, as far as the eye can see. Every corner you turn reveals more and more grandeur. Spending just a few minutes behind these walls transports you to an opulent world of decadent luxury and beauty. The heart of the Forbidden City is right in its center, the three great halls, which consists of the Hall of Heavenly Harmony, the Hall of Preserved Harmony, and the Hall of Middle Harmony. Leading up to the three great halls is a 250-ton marble carriageway. Think of it as a kind of ramp. Servants would carry the emperor up the carriageway in a sedan chair. The emperor's usual destination, the Forbidden City's largest structure, the Hall of Heavenly Harmony. Inside, the emperor's throne. China was ruled from this chair for almost 500 years. Outside, the Forbidden City is surrounded by royal gardens, moats, and thick walls. Each of the 4 walls that surround the city has just one gate for entry and exit. The moats and walls were designed to defend the Forbidden City against attack. Chinese emperors ruled within these walls for hundreds of years, until 1911. It's called the Forbidden City because it was off limits, forbidden to commoners under penalty of death. But today, commoners stream in to see how Chinese royalty once lived. According to most accounts, the emperors lived very well. Spending just a few minutes here helps you understand why they rarely left the Forbidden City, even if it meant losing touch with the way the average person in Beijing or China lived. As you walk by some of the smaller buildings, you may be passing quarters where emperors housed their legions of wives and concubines. Hundreds of years ago, you'd have been stopped by squads of eunuchs who were trusted to guard the women. Today, of course, there are no eunuchs here, nor are there any concubines. No emperor sits on the throne. The city emperors built to keep the rest of the world out is now open to the world. And more than 30,000 commoners a day visit a place that would have been off limits to them just 100 years ago. The walls that surround the Forbidden City are impressive, but if you're willing to travel 40 miles outside of Beijing, you can step back 2,000 years in history and see the Great Wall of China. Massive building projects didn't begin in China with the Olympics, Parts of the Great Wall have existed for thousands of years. Back then, the wall was mostly made of massive mounds of earth rammed into wooden frames. But during the 1500s, China was often under attack by Mongolian armies from the north, and the Chinese emperors from the Ming Dynasty got serious about building a wall that would keep out invaders. They turned to brick and stone. The project took about 100 years to complete, using mostly forced labor. Today, it's still the longest man-made structure on Earth. The Great Wall goes on forever. It's hard to imagine modern equipment building it, with bulldozers, helicopters, and cranes. Now take into account that it was made entirely by hand, and it spans a distance that's equal to half the U.S. The 1,500-mile Great Wall looks like an endless snake that curls itself along some of China's steepest winding ridges and mountaintops. Just being here makes one wonder how human beings could have hauled the raw materials up here, let alone assemble them into a never-ending wall. It was from these stone lookout towers that soldiers would send smoke signals to warn of attacking armies. And these holes in the walls, that tourists barely notice, were part of a strategy to fight off the attacks. Chairman Mao once said, "He who has not climbed the Great Wall is not a true man." Today, massive crowds of true men and true women climb the wall every day. Sometimes there are so many people that you feel like you're on a busy Beijing sidewalk, only this sidewalk is incredibly steep. When they talk about climbing the Great Wall, they don't mean scaling the side. It's built on rugged hills. This is the world's biggest stairmaster, and watch out, the steps aren't always even. And as you walk, every contour and every bend of the wall seems unique under your feet. The climb is no walk in the park, but that doesn't stop people, old and young, from trying. Going down is just as difficult as going up. Even the most athletic hikers will be thankful for something Ming Dynasty Chinese soldiers never had: handrails. If you want to do more than watch Olympians get their exercise, you can make a day out of hiking the Great Wall. The further out you hike, the more the crowd will thin out. The summer heat will be brutal during the Olympics, so make sure you bring some water and dress accordingly. The wall is an easy day trip from Beijing, about an hour-and-a-half ride by bus, taxi, or tour van. Once you get here, the admission price is under $15. What if the Ming Dynasty emperors who built the Great Wall of China could see their creation now? They might be struck by the irony that the wall designed to repel fierce Mongol warriors is now invaded by armies of paying tourists. Beijing may be the fastest developing city in the world. Beijingers who leave, even for a few months, come back and are shocked by the change, especially because of the Olympic construction. But the city is both cutting edge and rooted in the old ways. You can see it on the streets, where brand new luxury cars clash with antique bicycles. In fact, one of the first things you may notice when in Beijing is the sheer number of bicycles. The heart and soul of Beijing balances on two wheels. People ride bikes to work in their business suits. They transport products to market. The only thing they don't do on a bike is what I'm doing right now, riding for fun. You probably won't have much fun riding on big city streets, even if you're a hardcore New York City bike messenger. But there are places you can ride a lot more safely. Off the big city roads, there are historic courtyard neighborhoods called Hutongs. Many date back to the Ming Dynasty in the 1500s. Hutong means alleyway or lane, and every alley leads to a compound of homes arranged around a courtyard. Some Hutongs are located near the Forbidden City, where Chinese royalty lived. These neighborhoods housed people who served royalty, maids, craftsmen, cooks, and domestic servants. One of the best ways to experience Hutongs is by bike. It's easy and cheap to rent a bicycle in Beijing. You can find rental shops near many of the major Hutong districts. You'll need a hefty cash deposit, 500 yen, or about $65. The cost of the actual rental is just about $2 for half a day or $4 for the full day. Once you've got your bike, head into the Hutongs, like this one in the Hohai or Rear Lake district. Just look out for the convoys of bicycle rickshaws carrying Olympic tourists from all over the world. And the other bikes. And the occasional cars. But now, you're riding like a Beijinger, and you can take in the Hutong experience. The Hutongs are like villages frozen in time. People live in them almost as old Beijingers did 100 years ago. Today, many Hutongs have electricity, but there are still Hutongs without plumbing that rely on outhouses or communal bathrooms. Some people who live in Hutongs run shops and restaurants. Some sell refreshments. Some just go about their lives, even though their neighborhoods are invaded by prying eyes every day.
The word Hutong means alleyway. This is an alley that is between people's dwellings. There are doors that you see, and that's how people enter their homes.
As charming as it seems, the Hutong way of life has been rapidly vanishing. There's a crush of people moving to Beijing, and the city needs more space for housing.
A lot of these Hutongs have been torn down to make room for modern high-rises, but not this one. The city has saved the Hohai Hutong neighborhood to preserve a piece of Beijing history.
So if you want to see the Hutong way of life, you can be assured there will be a few to see. But Beijing is rapidly changing. So to experience as much of the old Beijing as possible, the sooner you get here, the better.
Welcome to the largest flea market in China. It's called Panjiayuan. It's also known in English as the Dirt Market, the Ghost Market, or the Sunday Market. Now, there are 3 reasons you and your family will love it here. The first is this is like a cultural museum of China, from the Ming Dynasty to Mao, but you can buy the exhibits here. Number 2, the prices are all negotiable. And number 3, there are things here for every single room in your house.
Whether they're in a buying mood or just browsing, this is where Beijing families get their shop on. Each aisle is stuffed with everything from furniture to the tiniest of knickknacks, all displayed to catch the eye. Is it treasure or trash? Well, some of both. One thing a shopper won't see is a price tag. Here's how it works. The vendor names a price first. You're expected to make a counteroffer, anywhere between 50 to 90% off the original number. Then, let the games begin.
How much for a queen-size bed? What's
Maybe 240.
240 yuan?
12 pieces, 2 cushions and 2 pillows.
2 cushions, 2 pillows,
And 1 bed cover.
and then the bed cover for 240 yuan?
Yeah,
Okay. So then you'll also bargain a little bit? You'll negotiate the price a little bit lower?
Yeah, a little,
A little lower?
Yeah.
All right, so maybe 200 yen?
maybe.
Okay, so that's not bad. That's about $30, $25 or $30. That's a very good price for 5 pieces.
This freewheeling marketplace has a shady past. Back in the 80s, it was illegal to sell antiques. But where there's a will, there's a way. Sellers just gathered in the forest and hid in the shadows. This black market boomed, so more families cleaned out their attics, bringing both valuable heirlooms and kitschy odds and ends. But once the antique trade was legalized in 1994, local authorities cashed in on the informal marketplace by building this permanent home for it and charging vendors rent.
3,000 people come from all over China to sell their wares here. In fact, there are more Tibetan souvenirs here than you'll find for sale in a Tibetan village. It is one gigantic souvenir stand, and over 100,000 people come here every weekend to shop.
If variety is the spice of life, then Panjiayuan has some serious kick.
Here's something for the men in your life: taxidermy. You can actually take this home and do all your decorating with antlers. I don't know if this is an antique or not. There's supposed to be a lot of antiques here. Good luck getting that through airport security, huh? Oh, look at this. That's so, ni hao. Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, so with a sword. Is this Beijing opera? Ah? He's afraid to speak English, and I'm afraid to speak Chinese.
Representatives from all of China's 56 ethnic groups can be found plying their handicrafts, from Bowie batiks to elaborate Miao jewelry.
This feels exactly like a flea market. You get to dig through everything and find the good stuff. Oh, this is a peacock. The work is just incredible. It's all satin stitch, the shading, the colors that they chose. Beautiful.
Foreign tourists are a common sight here too, and likely to become more numerous during the 2008 Games. So even if shopping isn't an official Olympic sport yet, get your family's haggling skills into shape and show up early. The crowds are only going to grow. If your brain craves a little less bronze, sneak away from the Olympics and visit the Dashanzi Art District. Now, it's a Chinese version of Greenwich Village, and it's filled with teeming art galleries that have contemporary art. There's also performance art, and if you're not careful, you might just learn a little bit about Chinese history. Locals often call this area 798 Art Factory. The name refers to the heart and soul of this place, this art gallery called 798 Space. But there are many other art galleries here, each with its own treasure trove of art waiting to be discovered. In the 1950s, workers spent their days here manufacturing electronics for the military. The complex was built with the help of experts from the Soviet Union and East Germany. At the time, China was rushing to rebuild after years of war, and speed was of the essence. The high ceilings, simple lines, and wide open spaces were ideal for a factory that needed to be constructed and online as soon as possible. Today, the assembly lines are long gone, but samples of the original machinery remain. A stroll through this open, austere room is more than a look at some up-and-coming painters. It's also a walk through Chinese history. The faded red propaganda slogans that stand out against the gray walls are relics of China's Cultural Revolution. This period, marked by chaos, political power struggles, and worship of Chairman Mao, began in the mid-1960s and lasted for 10 years. The slogans proclaim the infallibility of the leader and his thought, but the art below would never have been displayed during that period of draconian censorship. The juxtaposition alone of propaganda and artwork are a testament to the passage of time in Beijing. In the end, Garfield and Mao remind the viewer that no matter how avant-garde the artist, everyone has a past and a place in time.
This is edgy, modern art that actually makes you think. When I first looked at this picture, I asked myself, what was the significance of the blue, or was it there just to provide a contrast? And I didn't get it until I looked at both pictures together. So if you take a look at the first one, you see that the ladies in the background are judging the one in the front because maybe something's wrong with her. You take a look at the second picture and you realize the blue spot has moved, and now the blue spot is getting on everybody else. So when you pass judgment on somebody, you actually become guilty of the same exact thing.
There's a place for every type of artist at Dashansa Art District, too. This is 798 Photo Gallery, the first to be entirely dedicated to photography featuring China. Today, the work of Michael Wolf is on display. His current collection, named Architecture of Density, takes delight in finding the humanity within the repeating patterns of Hong Kong high-rises.
The uniqueness of the 798 Art District has attracted the edgiest, most avant-garde, and most successful Chinese contemporary artists. If you love modern art, this is a spot you shouldn't miss.
If your taste in art runs toward the surreal, a visit to Contrasts Gallery may be just the ticket. This exhibit by Luo Shi is a new and strange look at the concept of metamorphosis. The 798 Art Factory isn't just a collection of trendy galleries, cafes, and shops. It's a community full of people who work and live right here. One of these artists is Li Songsong, a painter who moved in back in 2002. Li invited us into his workshop and spoke about life at Dashansa Art District.
在我眼里，这就是我不仅是我的工作室，也是我的家，也是就我所有的生活、我的工作、我的一切都和这有关系。
After you moved in, it took you about 3 months to get the place ready. What happened when you washed the walls?
所以先开始我们拿水先冲墙上的土，那个上面的字就顺着流下来的黑水，红的字就显露出来。当时我有点当时第一个感觉，这还有字，吓我一跳，而且是非常的，就是那个年代的字。虽然这个我觉得对每个中国人来说，这种标语是很熟悉的，从来都不是一个陌生的东西，但是还是，怎么说呢，吓了一跳，或者是有一点震撼的那个感觉。
Why do you think that artists gather here at 798?
我想当初艺术家被吸引到这个地方的一个最大的原因是，艺术家需要找一个工作的地方，就是一个空间，一个足够大的空间。因为艺术家，我觉得工作和比如其他的一些工作方式有一点不同，就是对空间的要求可能比较大。而且当时这个地方，一个是它不是在农村，它是离城市也比较近，生活比较方便。还有呢，它有充足的这种被废弃的、不太用的厂房可以出租。我想这个是当时吸引艺术家的原因。还有一个就是价钱当时很便宜，因为没有人觉得这是黄金宝地啊，是一个这么让人竞争的地方。但是慢慢的，艺术家来的多了，也有画廊在这儿开业了，这就变成一个比较吸引人的地方。因为的确在北京没有第二个这样的地方，以前没有。
And what do you think the future is here?
我觉得我不知道，我完全不知道。如果它贵到一定份儿上，就是它的房租涨到，艺术家不可以承担的话，那我觉得艺术家就搬走，找别的地方。那可能有更多的商业性的机构，或者真正有 付得起这个昂贵的租金的什么画廊或者可以搬进来。这个我想规律总是这样的。
That's it for this episode. Here's a look at what's coming up on the next Beijing Are You Ready? On the next episode, sample Chinese delicacies at this 400-foot-long buffet. Then chill at the world of Suzy Wong or Buffalo Club. Finally, nighttime fun at Laoshe Tea House, where Peking opera and Kung Fu share the same stage. That and more coming your way on the next Beijing Are You Ready? From the Forbidden City, I'm Mary Windishar, and we'll see you next time.
哪里都是尽情自由的味道，荣誉梦想。在这里全部实现。One more nation come together.